Okay guys, so the last topic that we need to cover in this unit is ageism. We've talked about racism, we've talked about ethnocentrism, we've talked about sexism, and the last one we have to talk about is ageism. Ageism is the set of beliefs, attitudes, norms, and values that justify prejudice and discrimination against a particular age group. It's age stratification. Chronological age is another way for us to achieve different social rankings. The thing about ageism is that it will at some point in time impact all of us. There is not any one particular age that is necessarily better or worse in our society than others, although we have two groups that face the most amount of ageism, if you will. One is your age group. So if like me and my friends walk into a store and you and your friends walk into a store, who are the store clerks going to watch more closely? They're going to watch you more closely because the stereotype or the belief here is that teenagers are more likely to shoplift than middle-aged women, right? However, if we all live long enough, then we also get to the point where we recognize that we as a society do not necessarily treat those who are older in age with a tremendous amount of respect. So this is the unequal distribution of resources based upon age. There are a couple different reasons given for why ageism happens. So first off will be the functionalists. The functionalists say that the treatment of the elderly reflects the role that they have in society. Our attitudes changed greatly as we transitioned from an agricultural society to an industrialized society. When we were an agricultural society, we relied upon the wisdom of the elderly to help us. They had been there, they had done that, they understood the problems, they knew how to overcome them. Well, in an industrialized society where technology is constantly changing, we don't believe that those who have, been there, done that, have they been there? Have they done that? Do they know how to remedy today's problems? So since we no longer necessarily respect their knowledge, then we start to kind of treat them as if they are more or less disposable. The second theoretical perspective, the conflict perspective, says that ageism is the result of competition over scarce resources, in this case, jobs. So industrial society has actually more workers than really what it needs. So concepts like forced retirement help to replace those high-priced older workers with younger, cheaper workers. This leads to stereotyping older people as being intellectually dull, inflexible, closed-minded, etc. Those are all given as like excuses or reasons to encourage those who have been at a job for quite some time to retire and make room for someone else. Is that necessarily true regarding those individuals? Absolutely not. But we also know that for many jobs, you can hire two new workers for less money than potentially what you're paying for one older worker. And then finally, the symbolic interactionists say that just like everything else, we learn ageism, and we do so mostly through negative stereotypes. We have negative stereotypes of the elderly, and those are transmitted to the next generation through socialization. I know not that long ago, Kira and I were driving down the road, and I was complaining about the person in front of us going slow, and she's like, "Oh, Mommy, they must be old." And I'm thinking, where did she learn this? And it made me really kind of evaluate the things that I say and the attitudes that I have towards individuals, because it may not be an old person who is driving. It may be a young person who's just learning how to drive and is unsure of themselves. It may be someone coming home from the hospital with their newborn baby in the back for the first time. Like, there's nothing out there saying that just because someone drives slow that they might be elderly. So what's the impact of this? First of all, we need to take a look at how this impacts our older individuals when it comes to poverty. A very small percent of the very wealthy distort statistics. So it's estimated that 10 to 19% of the elderly live in poverty, depending on which measure of poverty you're using. 40% of the elderly rely on Social Security for 90% of their income, but Social Security only replaces about 51% of your working income. So we have almost half of the elderly who are relying on Social Security, which provides you about half of what you used to make in order for as accounting for the vast majority of their income. So it should come as no great big surprise that we see individuals who are elderly all of a sudden living on a very, very tight budget and potentially not being able to continue to have the same level of standard of living that they had enjoyed in the past. So there's very large discrepancies here. Like I said, there is a small percentage of the elderly who do have a significant degree of wealth. Racial and ethnic discrimination are magnified. So like I said, ageism is one of those things that if we all live long enough, we're all going to experience. Some of us will never experience racism. Some of us will never experience ethnocentrism. Some of us will never experience sexism. You live long enough, everyone's going to experience ageism. So older minorities are usually in worse shape economically than older whites. Racial and ethnic discrimination is magnified with old age. Older women in particular are one of the poorest segments of American society. This may get better in the future as we see that more women have been in the workforce, therefore more women are contributing to Social Security, more women are contributing to their own retirement. Elderly women today, like the ones who are elderly right now, were oftentimes blocked from better jobs throughout their working lives, which means that they are now unable to support themselves. And we are also going to see ageism continue as our life expectancy increases. As life expectancy rises, our savings are now going to have to last longer. It used to be that the average life expectancy was like 70 years old. You retired around like 62, 65, so you had to have enough money saved up to live like, 5-7 years, something like that. Now, with life expectancy continuing to increase and increase and increase, when you retire at like age 65, you better be prepared to live for the next 20, 30, or more years. This means that you have to have that money in your account or some way of obtaining that money, which not everyone has. That's why it's so very important to start planning for your retirement as soon as you get your first real job. As far as political power is concerned, this group is interesting because a lot of the elderly turn out to vote, but they don't have the same level of unity as a lot of the Hispanic Americans. It's one of the most active voting groups. In the 2008 election, 70%, slightly more than 70% of those who are classified as being elderly, 65 and older, voted, but they aren't united because the elderly cuts across all racial, ethnic, and class divisions. So as a result, it weakens their political clout. Okay. I also have for you a video on sexism. So the sound quality isn't all that great at first. It does get better, but it's a really interesting video. Your test is going to be next Thursday. We have class Tuesday and Thursday next week. On Tuesday of next week, I'm going to have like a live Google Meet so you can get together and ask any questions. If you're unable to make the Google Meet time, I will also be available to answer any questions. Your test will be several different short answer questions, and you'll have to pick like 3 out of 4 or 5 out of 7, something like that. I don't entirely have it finished yet, so I can't tell you exactly how many questions will be on there. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I hope to see you at the Google Meet next week.